information that would keep Willow from destroying her life.
For your sake, I hope you take it.
Stop me from doing something stupid.
If you find out something about one of my kids, you have to tell me.
What incentive does she have to keep her mouth shut?
General Hospital fans, stop pretending this week's episodes made any sense. The latest round of General Hospital episodes manages to turn confusion into an art form. Characters wander in and out of plots as if they've lost their own scripts, while the audience is left with little more than dangling threads and misplaced logic. Let's start with Britt. The last time she was seen, she was on the pier with Jason, and now, apparently, she doesn't know where she is. Kidnapped? Drugged? Or perhaps the writers simply forgot to jot down a transition scene. Either way, her absence, paired with her fractured relationship with Liesl, remains unresolved and increasingly irritating. Meanwhile, Chase continues his crusade to save poor, fragile Willow, though his efforts veer into obsession. He's hovering so close, it's hard to tell if he wants. Anna warned him to stop meddling, but naturally, he barrels ahead. Too entangled in Willow's chaos to notice she's spiraling into caricature. One almost hopes Brooklyn will sit him down and beg him to let this melodrama go. Speaking of Willow, she's once again the eye of the storm. She's tangled in custody drama, conveniently blind to Drew's shady dealings, and apparently unbothered that he might have bribed a judge. Or was it Sidwell who orchestrated the bribe? The narrative can't seem to decide. Drew, of course, preaches endlessly about keeping the family together while simultaneously making every destructive choice available. Therapy might serve Willow well, though perhaps the writers enjoy keeping her unhinged. Chase, in the meantime, risks his career meddling in all of this. He could lose his badge, return to it, and with his name tied to a judge's mysterious death, where naturally he was the last person seen with her, one wonders if the man enjoys digging his own grave. Elsewhere, speculation brews about the next pregnancy candidate. Portia, Jocelyn, or some unfortunate wildcard the writers pluck from obscurity. At this rate, anyone could end up with a plot-driven bun in the oven. Cody and Molly's potential pairing drags, along with the speed of molasses, while Rick's bizarre hostage situation hovers between comedy and absurdity. If the goal is entertainment, fine, but at least admit the storyline has crossed into parody. And then there's the matter of programming interruptions, with Beyond the Gates replacing an episode entirely. Perhaps that was a mercy. After all, watching the chaos unfold, Britt's vanishing act, Willow's breakdown, Chase's misguided heroics, Drew's legal gymnastics. Each plot is its own tangled knot, with no scissors in sight. The only certainty is that the longer it goes on, the more viewers are left scratching their heads. The writers want you to believe Nina ruined Willow's life, but that's a lie. Soap operas thrive on delusion, and General Hospital delivered it in spades with Nina and Willow's latest showdown. At long last, Nina stopped coddling her perpetually weeping daughter and actually said the things everyone has been waiting for her to say. The result? Willow, predictably, remained as oblivious as ever. For starters, Willow's entire blame campaign against Nina is as laughable as it is exhausting. She insists Nina cost her everything, while conveniently forgetting her own string of self-sabotaging choices. Let's review. She cheated on Michael, betrayed Chase before that, and defiantly clung to Drew, despite every soul in Port Charles, Nina included, warning her of his glaring flaws. Drew didn't just come between Willow and her family. She rolled out the welcome mat and handed him the keys. Yet Nina is the villain? Please. Nina, meanwhile, missed the opportunity to remind Willow that she's not the only victim in town. Madeline robbed her of 20 years, 2 children, and her fortune. But Willow doesn't care for context. She's far too busy absolving herself of responsibility while projecting her failures onto her mother. What Nina should have done, besides finally tearing into her daughter, is show her the door, literally. A nice get out punctuated with a door slam would have been poetic justice. Because as cathartic as the exchange was, Willow, or Weeping Willow, as she has been so accurately dubbed, deserved the full verbal sledgehammer, not a polite scolding. The hypocrisy of Willow's moral compass is almost artful. She scolds Nina for secrecy while conveniently glossing over her own adultery. Michael warned her against having Drew around their children, but she didn't care. Drew was her priority. Now she weeps over her losses while blaming Nina for the fallout. It would almost be funny if it weren't so tedious. And then there's the sideshow. Rick, still locked away somewhere, remains mysteriously clean, fed, and alive. Who's taking care of his basic needs? Viewers are left to wonder who's holding his hand, and more. Meanwhile, Cody is busy being the unassuming hero, Scout is missing from the narrative entirely, and somehow, a dog is receiving more airtime than half the cast's seasoned actors. Priorities, anyone? Elsewhere, small mirror Ava and Christina, once mortal enemies, are now scheming like sorority sisters. Is reconciliation the new Port Charles pastime? Perhaps next week, Christina will finally admit Ava didn't actually push her out a window. Stranger things have happened. After all, these people keep forgetting who's raising whose children. But the heart of this episode was Nina versus Willow. The acting was stellar. Caitlin McMullen played Willow's unraveling with perfect brittle denial, while Nina's righteous fury finally gave the audience a release. It was the closest the show has come in ages to recreating the raw intensity of their pre-mother-daughter reveal fights. The difference this time is simple. Nina had the truth on her side, and Willow had nothing but excuses. In short, Nina triumphed, Willow flailed, and the audience finally— Now, if only the writers would stop lavishing screen time on pets and missing children's subplots and focus on the actual drama, General Hospital might remember how to be the powerhouse it once was. The only person Drew actually controls is Willow, and watching her throw away her kids just to protect him is pathetic. For once, Nina Corinthos decided she had endured enough of Willow's saintly victim routine, and the result was nothing short of glorious. After years of treading carefully, Nina finally stopped walking on eggshells and delivered a much-needed verbal smackdown. The audience could practically hear the collective cheer. At last, someone told Weeping Willow the truth. The irony, of course, is that Willow's misery is entirely self-inflicted. She chose Drew over her children, she chose to ignore repeated warnings, and yet she still points the finger at Nina for her own disastrous choices. Drew didn't hold her hostage. Watching Willow twist herself into knots of denial while playing the eternal martyr is exhausting, and Nina simply dropped the hammer. What made the scene so delicious was the way Willow barely flinched, as if she couldn't quite process that anyone dared speak to her without reverence. Her default defense was, predictably, to cast herself as the wounded party while painting Nina as the eternal villain. But the truth hurt, and it showed. Nina exposed the obvious. Drew only holds sway over Willow because she lets him. The parallels weren't lost either. Just as Liesl once ripped into Britt with brutal honesty, Nina seemed to channel that same energy, reminding Willow that every calamity in her life is the product of her own willful blindness. Willow, meanwhile, clings to her martyr crown, insisting she's the only one harmed in this sordid mess, while willfully overlooking the collateral damage. The real question: will she spiral into full-blown villainous mode, collapse into a sobbing breakdown, or, miracle of miracles, actually grow up and take responsibility? Judging by her latest performance, the odds favor more finger-pointing and tears. For Nina, though, it was a rare triumph. Not a fan favorite by default, she nonetheless claimed the spotlight by refusing to coddle the unself-aware martyr any longer. For once, the most manipulative woman in Port Charles became the voice of reason. And Willow? She's still lost in the fog of her own delusion, too busy defending Drew's honor to realize she's bartering away what remains of her dignity. Here's the brutal fact. Willow isn't being manipulated, she's just making bad decisions on repeat. General Hospital has always prided itself on longevity, but lately, the show seems to confuse timeless with stalling. Case in point, the absurd delay in acknowledging it took 9 months for Monica's passing to be addressed on screen after Leslie Charleson's death. One shudders to think how long Robert Scorpio will be kept wandering off-screen before Tristan Rogers is formally written out, perhaps permanently consigned to an eternal jaunt with Holly. Meanwhile, the character dynamics have devolved into a carousel of poor judgment and misplaced loyalty. Chase, for reasons known only to the writers, has become a relentless advocate for Willow, despite her clear lack of interest. His white knight routine would almost be touching if it weren't so unnecessary. Willow, however, hardly deserves the effort. She has made an art form out of blaming everyone else while absolving herself of responsibility for her own disastrous choices. One wonders how many decades must pass before she realizes she does not, in fact, hold exclusive rights to his loyalty. Jason, for his part, continues to suffer in silence, communicating more with his facial expressions than most of the cast manages with entire monologues. His scenes with Tracy had genuine poignancy, a rare reminder of the show's capacity to strike a chord beneath all the noise. On the lighter side, Britt has returned, towel-clad in a public restaurant no less, and apparently invisible to the other patrons. It was so absurd it bordered on parody, yet her very presence is a breath of fresh air. Unlike the legions of women who have wilted in Carly's shadow, Britt can actually stand up to her. That alone makes her a perfect foil for Jason. The towel stunt may have been laughable, but Britt's sharp wit and irreverence remain the most grounded qualities on. Should the writers decide to make him the shooter in an upcoming plotline, it would feel less like drama and more like the universe handing him the consequences he's been begging for. His arrogance is practically begging Drew and Willow to use it against him, custody battles included. And then there's the show's occasional accidental comedy. Britt descending in a towel, diners unfazed, was unintentionally hilarious. Tracy accusing Willow of manipulation was almost more entertaining than Willow herself, who has proven far less the victim than she insists. As for Nina, she's finally stopped tiptoeing around her critics, particularly Willow, and it's about time. Through it all, the heart of General Hospital remains strangely personal. For many viewers, the show is tied to family traditions and generational bonding. If the writers don't learn to balance camp with credibility and grief with grace, they risk turning a daytime institution into a self-parody. Stop pretending Willow is a victim. Here's why she's the most delusional character in Port Charles. If disappointment were a plot device, General Hospital would have perfected it with Britta's return. The writers somehow managed to transform what should have been a poignant reunion into a train wreck of family estrangement. Liesl, a woman who already lost one child, is now written to despise her surviving daughter. Because, of course, nothing says character growth like recycling tragedy. The Reeves clan fares no better. Willow and Nina are once again locked in their endless cycle of resentment, and the family has been torn apart. Again. At this point, one wonders if the writers keep a dartboard labeled, "Despite whispers of liver disease, the actual diagnosis was cholangiocarcinoma, a cancer of the bile ducts." The initial confusion, complete with jaundice, sky-high bilirubin, and ominous liver spots, might have been dramatic, but the clarification landed with all the elegance of a poorly revised script note. Financial logic also continues to elude the show. Willow, who supposedly walked away from her divorce with millions, is portrayed as a helpless, broke nurse. The damsel in distress routine would be laughable if it weren't so insulting. Then there's the curious case of missed casting brilliance. Erica Slezak appearing on GH without reprising her iconic OLTL role feels like a wasted opportunity, especially when Brennan could have been revealed as Joey Buchanan. With Lulu conveniently working for the banner, the crossover potential practically wrote itself. Instead, fans are left with little more than coincidental initials. Nina finally dropped the gloves with Willow, treating her less like fragile porcelain and more like an actual opponent. Kelly Monaco's rumored return is another potential win, as is Lulu's moment of humility in consulting Brooke Lynn about Britt. That thread, along with Rocco's inevitable curiosity about his unconventional birth story, could finally produce a storyline grounded in genuine character interaction rather than recycled melodrama. The September 16th episode delivered a particularly sharp confrontation between Nina and Willow. Nina pointed out, yet again, that Willow remains blind to Drew's manipulations. Cynthia Watros delivered an outstanding performance, capped with what may be the best line in recent GH history. You could find a freezer full of heads in his basement. Her Drew obsession has reached comical levels as she blames Nina for her own choices while refusing to take accountability. If the writers are paving the way for a Willow mental breakdown arc, complete with reckless violence against Drew, Nina, and Michael, it would at least justify her increasingly erratic behavior. Until then, she remains a broken record of martyrdom and misdirected blame. And let's not forget the irony. Willow continues to vilify Nina for sins that pale in comparison to the horrors inflicted by Nina's own mother, Madeline. But hypocrisy is the heartbeat of General Hospital, and Willow seems determined to keep the tradition alive. At least Nina has learned how to win fights, poolside falls notwithstanding. Willow, on the other hand, is left flailing in denial, convinced that Drew is some kind of saint. If Nina ever reveals the truth about Willow's involvement with Dave, until then, expect more finger-pointing, more misplaced fury, and plenty of opportunities for Nina to perfect her smirk.